welcome to EMS at Sea Level once again. I'm with Johannes Lind-Widestam from Note SE in Sweden. Johannes, thanks very much for joining us. Before we get started with the questions, can you give me just a brief introduction to you and to Note as a company?
We'll start with Note as a company. We are a Swedish EMS company. We were founded in 1999, and we have been built through acquisitions as anyone else in this industry. We have today 8 sites, 3 in Sweden, 2 in UK, 1 in Finland, 1 in Estonia, and 1 in China. We are in 2020, we are approaching the 2 billion Swedish mark in sales. We will be either just above or just below. It's hard to say at the moment. But I think we are doing a good job at the moment. We have had a few years with very strong growth, and we are focusing a lot on operational execution, and I think that is the key for our success at the moment. Me personally, I started in the board of directors 2.5 years ago, and then in September, late September 2 years ago, I took over as CEO. I have a background from industrial companies. I've also been in the EMS industry a few times before. I worked for Flextronics, I worked for Keytron, and then some other companies like Assa Abloy and Nobel Biocare and others.
Okay, so yeah, you've learned the industry from various different companies and applying your own expertise to it. And you've had some really good performance this year despite the COVID situation. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of the impact of the pandemic on you and your customers and how you've mitigated that, but also set that against the backdrop of actually improving your performance in the last 6 months as well.
I think the biggest impact on us has been, first of all, you get this, what do? You get the pandemic, how do you handle it? How do you take care of your people? How do you ensure that we don't make or drive anyone that are working for us into get exposed? So we started off in China, of course. We closed the factory 1 week longer. We implemented a lot of safety precautions not to expose the people. And we worked together with the local government, as you normally do in China, to ensure that we did this in a good way. Then we opened the factory, and we quite soon got quite good traction. 3-4 weeks we were back up to what we would refer to as 100% output from the factory. We were not 100% of the staff, but we managed with some overtime and some temporary staff and so on. So we got China up to speed quite soon. But when China was up, then the pandemic was all over Europe, and suddenly we started to see a lot of other things happening. And Sweden has been quite. How should I say? We have not put in the same kind of restrictions as other countries. So we have had it has been up to us if we wanted to continue to operate it. There were no governmental restrictions. So all the 3 sites in Sweden has, throughout the pandemic, been producing with full speed. The same for Finland. Finland had a little bit more restrictions, but Sweden and Finland has been fairly non-impacted as of an operation point of view. Estonia, we had more precautions. We were having restrictions in how many people that could be at the office at the same time and stuff like that. And the governments in Estonia has been more restrictive, but they have also let us, decide how we wanted to operate there. But they were very keen on us taking all the steps that were necessary to prevent any spreading of the virus. UK, another story. UK had much harder restrictions. They were closing down a lot of businesses that were not of public service necessary or something. So they were. We closed one site and we were actually running the other side through the pandemic. We had a few customers that were in the area where the government thought that their products were needed, so we continued to produce. And then we opened our site in Windsor after 5 weeks of closing or something. But still in UK we have restrictions. You are not allowed to be, you have the 2 meter rule as they call it, or 1 meter with extra precautions, meaning that you need to have face cover and masks and stuff like that. So it's a little difficult to get a good operating, how shall I say, efficiency in those kind of circumstances. So we have to remake some of the layouts to allow people to pass each other with and so on. So we have been doing a lot of things to just to make our factories running. So from an operational side, I think we have handled it in a good way. We have worked always with the government's restrictions in mind, and we have always been, I would say that we have been even stricter than what the rules have been in all countries we have been in, because I was very keen on that we should not have any infected, or if they were infected, it should not come from us. That was really, really important for me and for us as a management team. Mm-hmm. We put in very strict travel restrictions already when we saw that it started to happen in China. We were already in the middle of January, we saw that something was happening, so we banned all business travel to any region there we had the virus spreading. So it started with China and Asia, and then Italy, of course, and then everything else came in there. So a lot of restrictions. When we look at the customer side and the demand side, it has been, I would say, I'm still saying it has been surprisingly good. When I mean that, it means that we were in February, March, we were expecting a big drop in sales, because we thought that, okay, if our customers are closing down, or if we are selling to I mean, we have ABB in Italy as a customer. I thought this will just die, this account, but the products were seen as necessary, so their factory has been running, and we are probably going to see an all-time high with that customer this year. Fantastic, but so surprised when they were confirming their demands and so on. And we have several of those accounts where we have expected drops, but they have just been keep on running in a very high pace.
That's very good.
And as we have communicated before, we won a lot of new customers in late 2018 and throughout 2019, and those accounts has been started to go into production, and the customers are still wanting their products. We have Play, the smart lighting company, for example. They are more or less tripling their demands this year, and they don't see how should I say a downturn in their demand, and we have several of those. So we have customers where we maybe sell 20-30% of normal sales, but we have other customers that are growing fantastic. So all in all, so far a fantastic year for us, with just about 15% growth for the first half year.
Yeah, it's been very impressive, hasn't it? And it's amazing how robust that demand's been. I think there are a few factors that are really interesting there. One is that, as you mentioned, you won a lot of new customers in 2018 and 2019, so you were building a nice strong ramp. Another factor is you've had this focus on operational excellence, so it's got the business into perhaps better shape than it has been in the past, and there's been kind of a backdrop of digital transformation. Do you think all of those things have come together to put you in a good position to not just weather this storm, but actually do well through this period?
I think everything is linked together in a way. It's just a matter of how do you connect the dots, if you put it like that. But it's of course it's linked. When I joined, I realized that we had made basically two overall challenges. First of all, we had a perception that our factories were getting full. We could not push more business through the factories. And when I traveled around and I saw that, okay, I don't see that it's that crowded. I saw that we have allowed the production footprint to just swallow it out in the factories, and that's why we can do a lot better than this. And we also saw that the first discussions I had when I came in was, of course, the budget. I came in late September, and everyone was into the budgeting, and I realized that many of the sites wanted to grow their headcount linear to the sales, and I said, okay, that's not the right way to do it. So we started to say, okay, we need to free up production space, and we need to understand how many people we need to do the tasks that we really are here to do. And we started to systemize this and say, okay, how much space do we need, and how do we get there? Because you are at where you are, and you realize soon, okay, we want to be here, but the journey there is not that easy as it sounds. So it was very intense projects to get there. But what we have managed to do is, of course, we have grown since then maybe 30% organically in 19, and so far in 20 combined. And I still see that we have open space in most of our sites. We can continue to grow a lot, and as we go along, we will find new ways to be even more efficient. But what I'm more impressed of is that when I started here and we had acquired Speedboard in the late 18, we were just about 1,040 people, and now we are, some months we are below and some we are above, but we are about 1,100. So we have grown our headcount with about 6%, and at the same time, the organic growth has been 30%. That makes Notes so successful today. And in my opinion, we're not having a more stressed daily task today than we had before. So we have managed to find ways to do what we do smarter and do it more efficient, and without having people to work more overtime and so on. So I think today is a better environment for the people than it was 2 years ago, and still we're doing so much more per headcount.
Yeah, and I think there's some fundamentals there in terms of improving your factory performance, and that improving your business performance, and improving the way you look to your customers, which again feeds the top line, and it all it's kind of almost a virtuous circle, isn't it? That if you're getting it right in the factories and you're getting it right for the investors as well, it's right for the customers, and it just allows you to continue this growth. And the fact that you see continued operational improvements is the key. It's not like, oh yeah, we've got to a certain level of efficiency and that's good. You have to keep on that journey, don't you?
Yeah. No, I think that's often you have a target or an objective. When we hit this level, we are happy, and that's what you normally do in the board or in the management team. You say, okay, if we can only get to say 8% EBIT level in our industry, if we get there, we are world class. But when you are there, what do you do then? We don't set the target. We say, okay, we believe that we can push the cost down to a certain level with what we know today. But when we are there, we will probably we will aim much higher. Yeah. So we will never be satisfied. And I think that margins are a little tricky to say, okay, we have a set level. I mean, we did 8.3% in second quarter. It's easy to say, okay, when do we hit 10? Yeah, I think we will hit 10, but I'm not sure that that's the objective, because when we are maybe at 9, we are shooting for larger accounts, and they will have lower margins, and that could be a better business in those accounts, even if they will not drive the margin higher and so on. So I don't want to talk about margin as a set number. We're saying we should be better than the industry, because we believe that we have a way to operate that are a little bit better than others. I have to say that since I'm the CEO, but it's no secrets in it. It's just hard work. It's dedicated work. But my point is that we will always have the possibility to be better. There's new technology out there. There's new ways of doing things. So we will continue to improve. That will benefit our customers through lower cost, but it will also benefit our shareholders and everyone that are interested in us, because we will become stronger and better. And I, for one, am so keen on investing the money we make into new equipment, into new ways of doing things. We have the last 2 years, we have launched massive investment plans, and we are investing maybe 2 times as we more in percentage towards compared to our sales as we have done in the last 10 years in aggregate. So we're not where we want to be. We have a lot of things that we are implementing, and so my firm belief is that we will be even better in the coming years, and that is also benefiting our customers. It benefits our performance. We should also keep in mind that the second quarter we had a dip in our delivery performance in March and April, but the dip was from 96 to 94.5 to 95, and now we're back to 97% in on-time delivery. So all in all, this really comes down to that we are the investments we do both in how we work and in recruitment, they are supporting our business model, and
yeah.
So it's all linked. It's just a matter of how.
Yeah, it is all part of a big puzzle. And you talk about that investment you've made and the ongoing investment. A lot of that is what some people would call digital transformation. It's investment in new technology. It's making sure the data is available, used intelligently. You have the right KPIs in front of the right people. Do you see companies perhaps that weren't on board with that thinking more about that because of the pandemic? Do you think the pandemic is going to accelerate that digital transformation for maybe some of those companies that have been slower to the party?
I think the pandemic will be, what you call it, it will divide the market in two. You have the ones that have enough finances or enough capital to make the transformation. They will speed it up. The ones that have not as strong balance sheets and are maybe losing some sales, they will be more safeguarding to get back into the black numbers, so to say.
Yeah.
And not be so keen on it. So I think the distance between the well-performing and the less well-performing companies will be bigger. Yeah. That is, I believe, and that's what we have seen in the historic downturns. That the ones that are strong, they will become stronger, and the weaker one will struggle until they are back into the good numbers. But yeah, the distance are bigger, so that's what I would expect.
Yeah, and do you think fortune favors the brave? Do you think it's those at the moment when you look at where they are in 2020 and where they want to be in 2022, it's those that are bold now and invest in the right technology, in the right areas of their business that will do well, and the others that are at risk of either being acquired or actually disappearing?
I think it's always in the how should you say, the backwater of any crisis. You will see a lot of acquisitions and consolidation in the industry, and I foresee the same thing after the pandemic crisis. But the thing with this crisis is that normally, take the financial crisis, it was very clear when it was over, because it was okay. It was half a year or 9 months with real bad economic terms, and suddenly all this bad debt and everything, the banks were saved and everything were okay. Then it started to go up again. If you look at this crisis, we're now 7 months or so into it, and 3-4 months ago, everything looked quite good. Economies were opening up, less people got infected. It moved over to America and South America, but also US seemed to be handling it fairly well. Now it's blooming up again, and we see that many countries in Europe are looking at stricter restrictions, and so we don't know if this is over. And I would say yes, it's the first phase is over. Now we are looking at what is coming, and if we see a new close down, it's going to be another half year with quite drastic changes, and if that happens, I mean, then you don't know, because that will affect all the weaker ones will be more affected than the stronger ones for sure. But how much and what happens? It's this crisis is nothing that we have seen in the modern history. Yeah. So it's we don't know yet, but it's interesting times, even though interesting times can be more positive if you put it like that.
Yeah, it's very much uncharted territory. And I think it's not just the companies that are struggling to see what happens next, it's the governments as well. And at the moment, we're seeing a lot of governments talking about different incentives to, to mitigate the economic damage, particularly to manufacturing, as they try and bring more manufacturing onshore. And some of it we see is quite protectionist in terms of tariffs and those kind of things. Do you think it should be perhaps, and personally I feel it should be a little more focused on investment? There should be some way of encouraging those high-cost countries, particularly to do more digital transformation, to think about how they automate their business. Do you think governments are able to think of that, or do you think they just have the blunt instruments of kind of tax breaks and tariffs and trade protection?
I personally, I don't believe in trade protection. Sweden has been for free trade forever, or at least for as long as I can so to say oversee. So for me, I think trade tariffs will always prevent the market from moving ahead, because it will safeguard where you are. So it's, for me, that is just it's a political tool to use because you want to get re-elected. That's how I see it, basically, and it will not support your country or your business over time. It can do it for a few years, but eventually it will bite you in the back, as you would say in Swedish, freely translated. But so what I would guess is that I think the governments are a little bit too optimistic for how much they can affect. What I would say is give the companies, how should I say, easy and clear rules, and then the business surrounding will sort it out by themselves. I don't like them say, okay, we are giving you 20,000 euro in benefit if you buy an electric car. That will happen anyway. Yes, some support is needed, but don't overdo it, because then it will kill an existing part of the market, and then a lot of good values will be scrapped out, and that's also an environmental cost. So you need to balance this. So don't be too aggressive and say, okay, we want to make this change now. The same goes with digital transformation. Now everyone is talking about, should we even have offices, or should everyone work from home? I, for one, think it's much better to have an office, and then you combine this in a smart way, because people also need to get together and meet, because that's where a lot of creative business value is done. So there is a lot of discussions of how to handle this, but I think that we are where we are, and that's not just by coincidence, because it's a way that has been proven to work. So don't destroy the working models just because we're in a crisis. Learn from it and move on, but build from where you are, and not try to build something that are just not where we are. I think it's maybe not that logic, but that's how I see it. So clear and easy rules to follow and support the, so we don't lose too many companies. But then let the industries handle the transformation. Don't try to make it with governmental funding. That's not going to work.
Yeah, so allow the industry to make its own decision and to move its own dynamic, but at least give them clarity on what the rules on the systems are and what's in place. Yeah, absolutely agree. And you mentioned there the idea of this transformation and people not working from home. How have you and your team coped working, via these kind of video calls and being distanced?
No, I think it works very well. Look at this, you and I have this interview over Zoom. It works fantastic, and the same goes for a lot of the meetings we have had. And if we can, we try to meet once in a while, because I think it's very valuable. I still travel out to our Swedish sites, which is the ones that I can go to, because I'm so interested in what they are doing, and that's hard to do over digital ways. But we have started to have virtual factory tours for the sites we can't visit, so I still see what they do, how the progress is going, we find the tools that are available. And sometimes we use a cell phone camera, sometimes we use a computer, sometimes we use other tools. But me and my team, we want to see how the daily work is progressing in the different sites. So we try to keep ourselves updated even though we can't travel.
Yeah.
And I guess that after this, we will not travel as much as we have done before, because we have learned to use new tools. But that has been, and that will help us, and that will save some cost, of course. So it's
yeah, it'll make you even more efficient. And as we said earlier, you know, the idea of having the data available to the people that need it, so maybe they don't have to visit quite so often, is hugely valuable. What about you personally, Johannes? You've been stuck at home. Maybe a lot of although you're in Sweden, so a lot of the restaurants you would normally go to have been open anyway, but has that had a big impact on your day-to-day life? Have you had to homeschool your kids, and have you spent the evenings binging on Netflix rather than going out to dinner?
I would put it like this, that in Sweden, the schools up to the 9th grade has been open as normal. So no home studying. We have had kids are, of course, if they show just the slightest symptom, they are sent home or being kept at home. So the daily life has been fairly normal. And if you are in the higher grades of school, they have been doing this home teaching over digital tools. That has worked fairly fine, I think. And for me, it has been a quite relaxing half year, because I spend normally maybe 180 to 200 days out of my home. And this time it has been maybe 1/3 of that or 1/4 of that. So for me personally, it has been a very relaxed time in my business life. So that's a positive side, but then I'm eager to work and change things. So I'm a little frustrated that I cannot do what I like, but since we have been doing well, that has taken out a lot of my negative stress levels, so to say. So if the performance would have been low, then I would have been really, really frustrated. But today it works well, and then I get more relaxed. So.
Yeah. Good performance makes all the difference. So before we go, last thing, any advice you'd offer your peers, EMS CEOs that are kind of working their way through these uncharted territories and trying to figure out what's coming in 2021?
I think that it's very dangerous to try to save yourselves out of the problem. And then that's I often call it to moving backwards into the future, because you need to make some offensive investments to get there. You cannot just reduce staff to try to come into the black numbers and then expect it all to sort out. You need to provide the tools and maybe invest in the tools before you can make the changes. So I would say be a little careful with the old school saving yourself back into the blacks, so to say, because that will be, the customer feels that, and then you lose 1 or 2 more accounts, and then you're in this negative turn downwards, and so take care of the customers. That would be my natural thing, and then you need people and resources to handle them. Otherwise, it will not go well.
Yeah, and I think it's that idea of it goes back to what we said earlier about fortune favoring the brave, and pushing forward and making sure you have the right strategies in place, and investing, but investing wisely in the right kind of things. Johannes, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for talking to me, and thank you to everybody that's been watching and listening to EMS at Sea Level. Thanks, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye for now.